How's it going, everybody? Welcome to North Alabama Hiking YouTube channel. And where we are at today is the Joe Wheeler State Park multi-use trail located on the south side of Wheeler Dam. Wheeler Dam. And what I was going to show y'all was a little bit about this trail. It's about a 2.2 mile loop. This overlook here used to be part of a park that was established here several years ago. Now, I don't know how long ago it was, probably in the 50s, before moving to the main state park on the other side of the river. I don't know if you can see it through the trees, but what you're looking at is Big Nance Creek. Big Nance Creek is a tributary of the Tennessee River. And anyway, you get some pretty nice views along this trail. I'm going to take you a little bit further and show you where there's remnants of the old state park. And I may talk a little bit about Wheeler Dam in itself. I did a video a few days back of Wilson Dam and some of the trails around through there. And so this evening I headed over here to Wheeler to this trail so we can talk a little bit about it. Now, as we continue to travel through the trail and the old section of the state park, and there you'll see that's an old bathhouse right there. And up ahead we'll see some of the old picnic tables. And there's an old cabin. And the only thing still standing on that cabin is the chimney. So folks could come down here and rent cabins and have picnics and all that other kind of stuff. Now, there's still cabins that people can rent today that's on the same side of the river, and it's there's some older cabins, but a lot of people rent them. A lot of fishermen like to rent them, and they're on the south side of Wheeler Dam. Plus, you have cabins on the main state park too. There's some of the old picnic tables. And you can look, before all this was grown up, I mean, you'd have some great views looking out over the river, you know, eating your dinner. So I'm gonna walk on up a little further. I will show y'all the old remnants of the old cabin, and then we'll get to the open area where you can see the dam a little better, and we'll talk about it. So I made it over here to the opening where you can kind of see the dam. I'll zoom in right there. Part of it anyway. But so we'll talk a little bit about that. Wheeler Dam was one of the first dams constructed by the Tennessee Valley Authority. I think it was actually the second one fully complete. And they started constructing it in 1933, and they actually had it finished by 1936. I believe is the correct date on that. And so, you know, from a historical standpoint, that was actually huge for the area. Because if you watch my other video I posted recently about Wilson Dam and that area, which is about 20 miles, 15 miles, 20 miles to our west, you'll see the importance of how these dams affected the area. Wilson was the first on the Tennessee River, and that was constructed by the Army Corps of Engineers, though, and TVA took it over. And then you had, in this area, you had Wheeler Dam, and then on further up the river, you had Gunnersville, and so on and so forth. But what made this such an important feature for the area was by adding the two dams, it made the Tennessee River fully navigatable, you know, by even large boats, because this area was impassable at times prior to the dams being built. You can literally, at sometimes, I've heard many years ago, older people saying that you could walk across the Tennessee River at some points, and then at some points the Tennessee River would flood and do a lot of damage to any towns that were near the river. So these dams help with the flood control. They help with navigation, and that made the Tennessee River open up to boat traffic all the way through its distance. So from Knoxville, you know, to where it empties, I think, into the Ohio River. And then from, of course, if you're using boat traffic, you can go from there, you can go down the Mississippi and down to the Gulf. So it opened all that up. And eventually, as the years go by, it opened up a lot of industry for this area. Decatur had a lot of industry open up because of the river, and then Huntsville did the same. In this area over in to the west of us in Florence, I mean, Reynolds Metals, which is now Weiss Alloys, it was opened up in the 1940s. So it was a huge, huge deal. It added a lot of jobs. And another thing that the construction of the dam did was the construction itself put a lot of people to work. And a lot of people in this area went to work. A lot of people also went to work where I just showed y'all you know, where the old picnic tables and the old park was built. You know, a lot of people got put to work. So, and that was a big deal for this area, because a lot of people in this area were really poor, and they were farmers, and they lived off the land, and in the 30s they were going through the Great Depression. So, you know, for the ability that people would come to work and work construction and make some money was a big deal, because a lot of this was all farmland. You know, most everybody in this area, my grandparents grew up in this area. They grew up during the Great Depression, and they were all farmers. That's what they all did. And so they, you know, they didn't grow up doing without the basic necessities, but they did grow up poor. I know my grandmother would tell stories about about life back in those days, and she said that one good thing about living off the land was, you had your own food, and you had your own animals to eat, and your own you grew your own food, so you had that. Now, a lot of people in the cities that lost their jobs during the Great Depression, they didn't have that. They didn't live off the land. So once they lost their income, they probably lost their place to stay, and they really, really struggled. So in that aspect, my grandparents had it a little bit better. They had the skills to live off the land and to hunt and to, grow their own, pigs, and raise their own pigs and their own cattle, things like that. So, with the TVA coming in here and doing this, though, it did help put some people to work and get more, get some people some more money. So it was a big deal. And then not just for them, but it's a big deal now because so much industry was able to come to the area over the years. And what you may not know is Huntsville was a smaller city than Decatur until about the 1960s or so. Of course, having the Marshall Space Flight Center and all that was a huge part of that, but none of that's possible without these dams and without gaining control of the river, and not to mention the hydroelectric power they produce. So this area, put this area on the grid, really improve the quality of lives for a lot of folks over the years. So that's what I want to, when you walk through this area, it is very scenic, it's very nice, but that'll give you something else to think about, and especially if you live around here and you've never studied up much on that, think about that. Our ancestors went through some very tough times, and luckily back then people had common sense, and our tax money went to good things such as this. I mean, it really did give back. Now, don't get me wrong, there was controversy when these dams were constructed, because that meant it was going to flood out farmlands and homesteads that were, near the flood stage of the river. So those people had to move, and they were paid for their land. But there was a very big deal about that. So, it was controversy, but it's part of history, and we learn from it, we move on, and anyway, I just thought this would be a good video today. If you ever visit Joe Wheeler State Park or Wheeler Dam or whatever, and you decide to hike this trail, you have a little bit of knowledge about kind of what went on here, how the way of life was here before those dams were complete, and how the way of life is now since they've been here. So anyway, appreciate y'all watching the video, and hope you learned something, and I hope you can get a hike out here someday. So thank you very much. So I made it here to the old cabin, and it's getting a little dusky, so can't see it too good from the trail on the camera, so I'll get a little closer. And that right there is the old chimney, and I say it's a cabin. There's the, I don't know if you can see it, there's the other, just two of them. It could have possibly been a pavilion, but I think it was a cabin. But ever since I've been hiking here over the years, there wasn't enough of it left to tell. But it was either a cabin or a pavilion. And you see the stonework. It looks a lot like the old CCC pavilion in the previous video I did. Looks like the same kind of work right there. So, you know, maybe it was a pavilion. But I thought somebody told me years ago it was a cabin. But it's one of the two. And it's, can't really see that one too good, but you can still see that one. Yeah, it's really cool seeing that when you walk by. And so anyway, this, you know, this section of this trail, it takes you right through this old stuff. And so I think it's pretty cool. So, and it's not as dark as what it looks on the camera. It's just, it's gotten dusky and kind of hard to see. On the camera, I can see fine, but I thought I'd show you all that. And I like to get out, and I don't just love hiking, I love history. When I come to these places, I like to get out and explore and have fun, and you know, just see these things. And my mind always goes back to what life was like and the time frames that you know, that we're talking about. I about fell there, sorry. And I just wanted to share that with y'all too. So I am going to include a little something about Wheeler Down to add on to the end of this video, and I hope you enjoy that too.